My life is filled with contradictions. I've filled many shoes, and the videos that I have produced lately, that I have produced in general, and have posted here on YouTube, on my assorted channels, whether it's the White Picket Fence, Stonehenge, Someone Who Is No One, or the Open Road Ministry, they're all moments of personal expression about how I see the world. Each video is difficult for me, and I want to share this with you. I'm a 100% disabled combat veteran. I've suffered spinal injuries. I deal with chronic pain every day. I suffered from a major TBI, crush injuries, and each day I fight with the chronic pain. I fight with the demons of PTSD, fight with the issues related to my service. And as a result, I fear judgment, mainly because of my speech difficulties, my mental focus, and my memory. However, the content that I produce and try to bring here over the years, what I've brought to you is about my art. It's about my voice. It's about my views and my experiences and the people I've met. And even now, the videos I create, they're continuing to change. Over the years, I have presented myself here on YouTube as a photographer and an artist. I'm internationally published. As a stoner with Stonehenge, I had financial position in a Colorado dispensary. A shrink. I was at a major university down here in the South, working with the students. A Burning Man adventurer. I tried to attend every year. I did not make this year. This is Mudtopia. It would have been awesome. I'm a world traveler. I lived in Europe for 25 years. I'm a gold prospector. I'm a geopolitical analyst by trade. Spent 28 and a half years in that position. I've also spent time as a men's rights activist, and a minister. Some of the work was easy to make and other videos were more difficult. Like my MGTOW content, for instance. I had to face fear of judgment, and I was very frequently criticized, attacked, and threatened because of my views. At that time, I started out as a mellow fellow, but I became known as the shallow puppet in 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19. I produced MGTOW content in the early days of the online presence on YouTube. It was an expression of the bitterness I felt in the darker time in my life. And I produced videos that were often very satirical, if not combative. And what a lot of people didn't realize is what I was doing is I was taking the transcripts of assorted feminist blogs and videos, and I was swapping the pronouns before it was fashionable, and I was presenting their words as my own. And then I would sit down and watch the hypocrisy occur. And my voice was attacked. I was attacked. But I stood strong. After all, what I was doing, I was basically asking, if men said what women say to us, right, to us, would society call it empowerment? Would society call it selfish, misogyny, hate speech? I found out it's hate speech. Their same words to us is accepted. This question got me canceled. I lost my channel. Even though the channels that I plagiarized were being promoted by the same platform. Today the videos that I produce are more spiritual in nature. A little geopolitical, as you've seen. But I still hold to my roots in the MGTOW lifestyle. But I know, why am I telling you this? I was recently asked, how can I be a minister and be a woman-hating MGTOW man? And then I was asked, don't they conflict? And it took me a few minutes. I really had to sit down for a few minutes because there's a huge misunderstanding that's occurring. At first glance, yes, MGTOW and the ministry seem to oppose one another. One looks like a retreat and the other looks like an embrace. One is walking away and the other says forgive and love. As a minister, I don't see my MGTOW past or present as a contradiction. And no, being MGTOW does not mean that you hate women. I mean, that is the misconception that we have. That's what we're attacked on. You see, back in 19, there I go again. Back in 2016, when I really started getting rolling within the MGTOW space, MGTOW was a response movement. Men walking away from traditional expectations after being hurt, exploited, and disillusioned. MGTOW was, and still is to some degree, about personal growth and independence, the creation of boundaries and management of emotional pain and the healing process rooted in independence. It was about addressing the dangers of one's own bitterness and finding inner peace. It was a movement rooted in self-protection. Men going their own way meant reclaiming our independence and refusing to be trapped in relationships or systems that were mentally and physically draining. MGTOW, it still is about stepping back, finding yourself, and being single, independent, and above all else, focused upon internal development and personal wealth. And personal wealth is not just about money, right? It's also about one's own self-worth. So the ministry and MGTOW are both philosophies with similar goals. One is about healing within, and the other is about helping others. Today, it is also the preferred response to the question about the bear. Hey, you chose the bear, we walk away. Over the years, a few MGTOW channels that I used to work with and whatnot, they're still promoting self-improvement and independence. After all, that was the goal, wasn't it? It was the goal of this movement, I think. But there's a growing community of men now who have become more bitter and more radical and more hostile, and it's showing in their in their creations, in their videos, in their speech, in their posts. They're expressing to us their bitterness because it's a response, again, to the question about the bear. There's a lot more demeaning type of behavior that is occurring at the same time. I mean, women told us what they want. They wanted us to leave them alone. And because of that, there's this growing loneliness crisis in this country, in our society. And men are being criticized for it. Men are finding themselves in the friend zone, while the desired ladies are all on the prowl for the 1%, the unachievable. They are using us for our wallets, using us for their emotional needs, but not fulfilling any sort of intimate requirement that the men might have. And men are constantly being shamed, whether we're MGTOW or not. We are being shamed on TikTok for clicks, and we're being told that we're not needed, and they're walking away from us until they need us. Open the door for me. Don't open the door for me. We don't know what you want anymore. Because we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. We're criticized for doing what you wanted. We're criticized for doing what you don't want. So what we've chosen is to leave you alone. MGTOW, men going their own way. But then when men sit here and say, hey, I'm really lonely, We find ourselves being criticized for having feelings, for having emotions, for expressing our emotions, those things that women told us to suppress because it's beta, you know? We're finding ourselves being put down online, as I mentioned before. We're some type of punching bag, and it's for clicks and viral moments. And those sections, those moments, those videos, those situations in which we're put in, they have an emotional toll, regardless of how masculine you are. There is not a day that goes by that a man or men are not put into situations by women that are meant to shame us or to shame them. We're told not to be chivalrous, but then you ask for help. When we do assist you, if we give you a seat, if we pull out the thing, if we open the door, if we carry a bag, we're called creeps, losers. We're met with the response, I have a boyfriend. Or worse, we're labeled beta, weak, worthless, poor, cuck. And as a result, we've stopped asking women on dates. We stopped going out on dates. We stopped paying for dates. We stopped asking, we are basically finding hobbies that are focused upon what we want as men. And we're spending that time upon us. It's going our own way. It is what the movement is. It's about self-protection and choice. But it's also become a movement based upon resentment and division, based upon what we see on TikTok today. The original idea back in my day, I'm old school again. The original idea was men protecting themselves, setting boundaries, and valuing self-respect. But things have gotten lost in the anger that's generated by both sides. Can you feel the minister in me coming out? The original idea was men protecting themselves, setting boundaries, and valuing self-respect. I said that again, right? Most men like myself, we entered MGTOW often following some sort of betrayal or bitter breakup, a relationship that failed, one that we thought was going to go on and on and on. My soulmate, blah, blah, blah. We come into the movement with bitterness. That's what it's here for. It's not because we hate women. It's on the contrary. We're here to address the bitterness. We're here to address and rebuild the lost trust. We're learning to retrust, to allow ourselves to become vulnerable once again. So when it comes to MGTOW as a movement, this is where I stand, and I'm old school. I don't see this with the creators today. See, the boundaries that men are setting are not unspiritual. Our sacred texts tell us to guard our hearts and to be wise and to avoid being unequally yoked. The healing that we are looking for requires distance, so we're stepping away. And sometimes walking away is the only way to stop enabling harm. When does it become self-harm? It's a spiritual type of practice. And independence, it can be sacred, because what we're doing is we're choosing solitude until trust can be rebuilt. It's not a rejection of love or rejection of relationships or hatred toward women. It is respect for our own worth, our own self-worth. See, bitterness is the danger that we're addressing. Spirituality calls on me to avoid letting bitterness take root inside myself, right? And that's where I must always check myself. Am I protecting myself, or am I shutting out growth? As a minister and a former MGTOW creator, I don't see my MGTOW philosophies as a contradiction. I see them as part of my identity because it's part of my healing journey. From MGTOW, I learned I do not need to be a provider at the cost of my soul, my inner being, my heart, my feelings, my emotions. I can value myself without someone else's approval. And from the spiritual perspective, I learned that even in betrayal, I must let go of the hate. I cannot let hate own me. And the forgiveness that I find is not for her, and it's for me. Both together remind me that I can set boundaries and still love people. I can walk away from destructive relationships and still walk toward my own purpose. Right? So, is there a conflict between MGTOW and my ministry? Only if we misunderstand both of them. If MGTOW becomes hatred, then yes, it conflicts. If the ministry becomes blind submission, again, yes, it conflicts. But if MGTOW means choosing dignity and independence, and if the ministry means choosing compassion and truth, then they meet someplace in the middle. A man striving to walk with integrity. And that's where I stand. Both MGTOW and the Open Road Ministry are part of my life. Both came out of my story. Both came from my experiences. Both came from my turmoils. And now it is my hope in sharing this that others who feel torn can see that healing doesn't always mean erasing your past. It means accepting your past and seeing how your past has caused you to grow. Healing means letting or learning how to hold on to parts of yourself, parts of your past, together with, honesty and grace. It's my assessment or my personal opinion that MGTOW in its healthiest form is about reclaiming personal autonomy and self-respect. My ministry, at its healthiest, is about compassion, forgiveness, and living in alignment with divine truth. And I don't think they inherently conflict, unless MGTOW is fueled by bitterness and the ministry is distorted, and that would enable abuse. In my life, the ministry and my MGTOW position, they coexist because they both arose from the life that I have lived and my search for healing and purpose in this world. One taught me boundaries and the other taught me grace. And together they form a complete testimony of who I am as an individual. So, does that answer the question? I wish to thank you now for taking time to listen to me, and hopefully I can regain some of your subscriptions. I hope that today you walk in peace and harmony. You can always submit some of your unused Shiba Inu to this disabled vet's address below. And remember that MGTOW is whatever you make it. It's whatever you need it to be. But let's try to remove some of the bitterness. I know we're reacting to this viral movement that's online, but we owe it to ourselves to walk respectfully through this life. So until we meet again, have a beautiful, beautiful day.